two things on the menu this morning. First of all, we're going to be joined by Steve and Finn, who are both here. Steve is in Dumfries, Finn is in Carlisle, both work at the University of Cumbria. And they've been involved in a really fascinating project about using immersive video technology to help with learning of students about various things. And I'll let them talk a bit more about that in a second. We've got a clip of how the experience works, and also a clip of Clarence, who is a composer, a very well thought of and very well respected composer musician, who talks about the experience that he went through as a subject of this experience as well. So again, I'll let Steve and Finn explain a bit more about that. But it's a fascinating topic that I'm really glad that you've joined this morning to tell us about. And then we're going to hear from Liz Richardson, who is a playwright and performer, who's got a new piece coming up, debuting at Rose Hill next month, called Local. Liz has done all sorts of different plays in the past, and she's going to tell us about that. She's from Whitehaven originally. Where do you live now, Liz? Do you still live in West Cumbria?
No, I live in the Peak District now.
Okay.
And I'm from a little village actually near Seascale, not Whitehaven.
Okay.
So I know Seascale well.
What's your village called?
Beckhermit, it's called.
Beckhermit.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I don't think I've ever met anybody from Beckhermit before. How do I say it? Well,
I've been having this chat with my creative team. We say Beckhermit, but some people say Beckhermet, where the two becks meet in the middle of the village.
And that's why it's called Beckhermet or Beckhermet.
Yeah. Two rivers, the River Ian and I can't remember the other one, meet in the village.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you live and learn something every day. So lovely. Well, we'll come to Liz as the second part of the call. And I'd say in the middle, we might hear about stuff going on that you'd like to tell people about, that you recommend. I shall open the batting now. I saw Conclave at the Alhambra in Keswick. I never else seen Conclave, the one with Ralph Fiennes in it. It's a fantastic film based on that Robert Harris book by the same name. Beautifully kind of made cinematographically way. Anyway, it's filmed really nicely. And I've been reading the book as well, sort of in parallel, and it was terrific. So that's my starter for 10, but we'll come back to that in due course. Right, let's cross then to Steve and to Finn. Finn H. Drood, what a great name that is, Finn H. Drood. And Steve McCarthy Grunwald, not a bad name either. It's very, very nice to meet you. I came across you because I think Karen Jones, who a lot of people on this call will know at the University of Cumbria, dropped me a line about the project that you're involved in. So I thought that's a really fascinating sounding, slightly different project for people who are involved in the arts and culture of the county to hear about. And so I've invited Finn and Steve to join us this morning to tell us about it. And we've got a bit of material to show as well. So Finn and Steve, over to you. Whoever wants to kick off, the floor is yours.
Well, now you've put us on the spot.
We have indeed.
Well,
we'll introduce ourselves and go from there. How about that?
Exactly. Start off with introductions.
Yeah, let's do that. Do you want to start off, Steve?
Then. Oh, you go first.
You go first.
All right then. Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve McCarthy Grunwald. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Cumbria, and my background is in mental health nursing. So, I'm very much involved in looking at supporting students to develop not only their skills, but also, alongside this video, learning from lived experiences. So we'll tell you a lot more when we get into that main bit. But over to Finn.
Thank you, Steve. Morning, everyone. My name is Finn Drood. They've recently changed my job title. I'm still getting used to it. The Specialist Technician for Digital Simulation at the University of Cumbria. It's a wonderful mouthful. But I have a background in media arts. I've worked in film for a while, and I'm now a technician at the University of Cumbria. What my job is I basically create digital material for simulation purposes for predominantly our health students. So using a variety of technology, so that can be virtual reality, augmented reality, desktop-based, web-based, or using what we call our immersive room, which is what this particular project was in, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about.
Okay, so if I start with a bit of background then, as I've mentioned, being a lecturer for mental health nursing and also covering nursing, what we want to do is be able to share stories of people's experiences within healthcare. And it's something that can be both therapeutic for the individual, but also very thought-provoking for the students going through to understand what it can be like not only to have a long-term health condition or an acute illness or whatever, but also how people live with that day in and day out too, and what we can learn from that to be better nurses. So we've been running kind of narrative modules. I certainly have been involved in narrative modules for the past 5-6 years. I've been at the university itself for the past 11 years now. So it is within that we get in touch with individuals who have life experiences who would like to share them. And we were fortunate 3 years ago to link up with Clarence Adoo. Now, Dr. Adoo, unfortunately, we were hoping he could join us today, but he couldn't. But Clarence's background is he lives in the northeast, over near Newcastle, is a renowned musician for many years, and he experienced a significant life-changing accident with a car accident, which left him paralysed from the neck down. So his story has a lot of kind of before and after aspects of what it was like for him, and his transitions from being a musician playing a cornet and a trumpet to then having to adapt and change. So what we usually do is we get somebody to come in and they do a live presentation and they share their experiences with the students, and then the students can ask questions. And that's kind of one level that we can look at getting more and more students to be aware of these stories. But the difficulty is obviously having to repeat those sessions over and over and over again. It requires individuals to come in and share their stories over and over and over again. And it can be quite draining for individuals to be doing that. In addition, there's only a limited audience that we can share with this. So the idea was, how could we capture Clarence's story? I'm working with Clarence initially to see whether he was interested. It was a case of me kind of thinking, well, what can we do then? How about a talking head? You know, it seemed quite an obvious way to go, and that way we could share that about. And I took that idea then to Finn, who is our genius within the technical department, to be able to see, well, what can we do with this then? Here's an idea, and how can we develop this lived experience through a talking head? But then Finn got a hold of that, and I shall hand over to Finn now to kind of say what we did next.
Yeah, so Steve came to me with this idea, and it was just really simple. We just want to capture this talk. Can we do some kind of talk, and it's like a video about it. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I wonder whether we can do a little bit more with that, and whether we can actually take it kind of to the next level and make it a little bit more engaging and interesting for our students as well. And at the time, we'd very recently at the university invested in what we call an immersive room. For people that are not necessarily aware of what that means, it's basically you think of it. We'll show you a video and some pictures as well, so you get a little bit more of an idea of what it is. But the basic idea is it's a 4x4 meter square that's open on one side, so you can look in. In that square, we have life-size projections on those 3 walls. There's a sound system built in the ceiling, so we can play any kind of sound through it as well. And the other great thing for us is those walls are actually completely interactive to touch. So we can use those 3 elements, so audio, visual, and interactivity, to create whatever kind of experiences we want to create for our health students. And I thought about this story that Steve brought to me about Clarence's story, and I thought, well, here's actually an opportunity for us to take Clarence's story and this really important story and this really important message for our students and turn it into something that's a lot more interactive and engaging for our students. So the idea that we came up with was to create a 25-minute long piece, almost basically like a video piece, but it's an immersive video piece. So it kind of stretches over those 3 walls. And while it's driven by Clarence's narrative and him recounting different parts of his life, we can use the visual and the audio side of it to fully draw the audience into that experience. So we can recreate those experiences that Clarence talks about. So one example is we've recreated basically the car accident that left him paralyzed, and we put you into the backseat of the car, and you get that first person point of view, sitting in the car, being surrounded by that environment, going through exactly what it would have felt like to experience that really significant part of Clarence's life. But obviously Clarence is retelling the story. And then we've also used audio a lot, because obviously Clarence's his whole life is kind of centered around music, and he's a musician and he's very passionate about music. So we wanted to bring in that element as well. So we've so the entire piece basically is kind of scored by either musical pieces that Clarence himself either has composed or performed, or by musical pieces that are very important to him. So we wanted to bring kind of all of those elements together and have it always centered around Clarence as the person. And I wonder whether that's a good point now, just to if we bring up the video clip.
Yeah. So Amy's going to load that up now. So Finn, just introduce this clip if you can.
Absolutely, yeah. So what you're going to see is basically we've just recorded what the piece plays like in the room, so you see what the room looks like, and the section that we've chosen is the aftermath of the initial accident, and it's showing Clarence basically being brought into A&E just after the accident, and this kind of first experience that you had coming into A&E in the hospital.
I never thought of being paralysed. I thought that I'd broken my arms and legs and would be out of commission for about 6 weeks. We were both taken to the hospital, and I remember it all very, very clearly. I was laughing and joking because I hadn't realised the seriousness of it. They fill in these forms saying what condition you arrive at, and was I unconscious, was I depressed, was I this, was I in tears, and on mine they wrote unusually happy. They looked at Emma first as she arrived on the trolley, and she was moving her arms and legs, and they thought that's fine. They came to me because I wasn't moving my arms and legs, and I'd come out the same car. The first nurse that spoke to me said,
"Bit of an accident, but I think you're absolutely fine. You just need a cup of tea and then you'll be out of here. You're just suffering from shock. But it's all right, I'll go and give Mama."
So she rang my family.
"Hi there, is this Clarence Adoo's family?" Yeah, I'm calling from the hospital. Clarence has been in a bit of a bad accident. Yeah, but don't worry, he's absolutely fine.
And then she got into trouble for doing that because very shortly later we realised it was more serious. So the first thing that hit me about going in the hospital was that people started shouting at me to do things. They thought I had no hearing. People started telling me these are professional people, what I should be doing, where I should be, and advising me on the most simplest of things. Why are they treating me like this? I soon realised that coming from my situation before and being catapulted into the world of disability, there's a lot of stigma that goes around that.
It's a pretty powerful piece, that.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a bit more about the thinking behind that and how you made it, perhaps, as well, and also maybe a bit more about how Clarence was involved in this and whether he was, completely on side, or whether you had to persuade him, or whether he, and also, I suppose, sorry, I'm asking lots of questions. What's the enriched learning for students that's come out of this?
Do you want to start us off, Steve?
Okay, yeah, I'll start off. With Clarence, it was very much an open conversation when he was with us nearly 2 years before this project was finished, so about 2 years ago. where I was asking Clarence how he would feel if we looked at perhaps recording his story. And if you had the pleasure of ever meeting Clarence at any time, he's the most positive individual you can think of, and he was open to it from right from the start. And he said anything he can do to help share his story, but help others to learn from that and develop their skills. That's, you know, he was always game for that. So what we wanted to do, both myself and Finn, after we'd started this project, which has taken about 15 months, from our initial kind of discussions with Clarence to putting the final piece together, was make sure that Clarence was involved all the way through. So it was a case of we gathered all of the information from Clarence, all of his story, pictures, all of the aspects which would go into the final piece. And then Finn developed like a storyboard, and we were sharing that with Clarence for him to have a look. And there was segments of it when it was produced. Again, we shared them with Clarence. So that way we knew from start to finish that everything that was going into it was exactly what Clarence wanted to get across. And even before we finished, the importance of getting this shared with others, we wanted Clarence to give us the okay as well to come and see it in the immersion suite before we launched it for students. And I suppose before we go on to the kind of technicalities of putting it together, student response has been phenomenal in the way they feel really connected to Clarence and his story, and they actually, because of that immersion experience, they have more of an empathy about the impact that's been happening there, rather from hearing a kind of conversation with somebody where, yeah, the story is still very powerful, but it doesn't always have that connection that brings in there as well. So I think that's something that we're getting a lot from the students who have seen this so far, and the students who have seen his stories previously do still reflect on that as well. So again, we know that it's a powerful enough story that would be interesting to see how students kind of take this away as well and put it into their practice.
And before we hear from Finn about the tech here, Steve, a reminder, these are students who are learning to be nurses and learning to work in medical situations.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, from what we've seen with this project, all the nursing fields, so adult nurses, mental health nurses, children's nurses, learning disability, all of the fields are involved in this to be able to access this. But we see this as something that could be used across different institutes within the university as well, because it's a whole story. So it's not just that focus on healthcare. There's elements of his early life, problems and developments that happen there, obviously the accident afterwards, but his connection with arts and music as well. So yeah, it's quite user friendly in that way.
Yeah, well, we'll see a clip of Clarence in a minute, but Finn, tell us about the technicals first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the way I approached it, obviously the base of it all has always been Clarence's story. So the first thing that we did, so after we had the initial conversation with Clarence himself about what we thought it should be, is we went in and recorded one of the talks that Clarence does to his students, which was like a 90-minute long conversation. And then I basically went through the 90-minute conversation, and we started picking sort of elements, and we've started to condense that narrative down to those final 25 minutes. And I think for me, obviously the important thing was kind of finding out, well, which parts of the big story are the most important ones for Clarence, but also kind of, I suppose, with my kind of storytelling hat on, kind of to find that through line of like, where's the narrative here? Like, how are we kind of connecting all of the dots, and how are we building a narrative out of this story that is engaging for the viewers and kind of takes us on that fully rounded journey. And then once we've identified that kind of that narrative thread, and we've sort of narrowed it down to those initial 25 minutes, like Steve said, I basically went away and I kind of drafted up almost like a script / storyboard type of thing, where we kind of just almost to a certain extent brainstormed together and kind of saying, well, what visuals do we want to go along with each part of the story? And some things, were really, really easy and straightforward. It's things like that car accident. Like from that first conversation, I knew I really wanted to recreate that car accident as best as I could, and kind of really put you into the car itself and have that really emotional connection and experience. Or other things is later on in the story, Clarence, he went on to perform with Coldplay at the Paralympics closing ceremony in London 2012. So again, there was such an easy no-brainer in terms of saying, yeah, absolutely, what we're going to do, we'll put you on the stage with Coldplay and we'll have you experience that from Clarence's point of view. But then other things are kind of a little bit more difficult, and it takes a little bit longer to kind of find out how we're going to best visually translate that. But so once we had that all narrowed down, I basically I think it was the initial, the actual creation of it was, I think, about a 5 months process. So I started putting the visuals together, I think it was September, October time last year. And then obviously we delivered the final piece end of February. And I mean, that's, I suppose, just a more straightforward process for anyone that's kind of dabbled in I suppose filmmaking is kind of aware of. You just collate your material, so a lot of it is kind of just images and 360 images. We've did a lot of kind of research into Clarence's life, and I've always say jokingly to Clarence, like, anything that's out there on the internet of him, I've probably seen at this point. And there's even, it's the greatest joy for me was always finding things that even Clarence didn't know existed. Like, I found some really old archival footage of his time at the Royal College of Music of London, and I sent it to him, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't even know that was there." So I just have this massive bank now, basically, of anything and everything that Clarence has ever done that's available on YouTube or in general on the internet. And then it was basically just about kind of putting the pieces together and creating that final piece.
All right, well, let's have that clip of Clarence, just a short clip of him reflecting on being involved in the project. And then if anyone's got any questions they want to throw at Finn or Steve, feel free to think of them now. But anyway, let's see a minute of Clarence.
That I found myself reliving all these events in my life. And because of the way that the room is set up, I am sometimes still sitting in the orchestra or in these different environments, even being in the car. I'm hoping that the good and the bad things that have happened to me through the medical side of things over many, many years, that students will realise that they're going to find themselves in a situation that is going to impact in people's lives, and so it can be an opportunity for them to see and take very seriously how important their role is and what a big difference they can make to somebody's world.
Gosh, he comes across as a remarkable man.
Myself.
There he goes again. He's so remarkable. Remarkable man. Can I ask, Finn, the technology that University of Cumbria's got, it sounds quite a big deal and quite a big investment. And you talked about 5 months of your time being made on this project. I mean, is it quite cutting edge for a university to have this sort of stuff, or do most universities do this sort of thing now?
I think we can still call it quite cutting edge. I mean, this kind of immersive technology is more up and coming. I know that so the company that we work with from the technical side of things, they started in primary education basically, and they built these immersive spaces for primary schools initially. And then when COVID hit, there was kind of this sudden demand within health and health education, and they kind of saw that benefit. So it's more up and coming in the general health education sector. I always like to think that the way we are using it at University of Cumbria is very, very different maybe from how a lot of other places are using it. So, and we're really trying to drive that innovation with that kind of technology. And what's really important for us is to always find kind of new ways of applying it. And I think having someone like myself with that storytelling, with that narrative, with that creative background rather than with a health background, I think has been really beneficial for us, because it is just, we're all creatives here. We're all aware of that. We sometimes look at things through a very different lens, aren't we, than other people when we work with, for example, clients. So I think that's been really, really helpful for us.
Okay. Amy's got a hand up. Off you go, Amy.
Yeah, I was just wondering, this technology and this technique sounds so powerful, and I think it's easy to see how that would be powerful for students, giving them an insight into somebody's experience. So that's a great thing, because you can imagine those students going into the workplace and taking that with them. But I wondered about current staff. So, current staff who are working in hospital in Carlisle, hospitals throughout Cumbria, could they benefit from this, or is this something that you've planned where maybe they could come in and view, Clarence's story and get the benefit from it as well?
Absolutely. I think there's definitely, and I'm sure Steve will agree, there's definitely a huge benefit for so many people, even non-students, to experience this Clarence's story. I mean, from our point of view, at the moment, in terms of the usage of the space, it is very much a space that's currently used internally for teaching. We are, however, at the very early stages of exploring what would a model look like to open it up to externals and to invite externals from a range of professions in to utilize these kind of spaces, whether that's from a creative point of view, whether that's from an educational point of view. So it's definitely something that we're aware of the potential of it internally, and it is something that long term we wanted to work towards. Yeah.
Steve, do you want to pick up there?
Yeah, just to say it is something where you are seeing more and more trusts and hospitals invest in technology such as this as well. So they may have things like virtual reality and other things. So there is scope that, although this piece itself is built in within the room that it's, the construction of it is within the room at the university and it's designed for that particularly, there's no reason why staff wouldn't be able to learn from similar experiences, because it is something which we're seeing emerging throughout education within trusts as well. So
fascinating stuff. I was lucky enough to go and see the David Hockney exhibition at Factory International in Manchester before it finished a couple of months ago. Has anyone else seen that? No, so again, it was an immersive video experience. So you went in there, and for an hour, you had 4 screens with all sorts of, obviously he's an amazing graphic artist, but also a soundtrack of his answers to interview questions throughout his life. Also some lovely old cine camera footage of him, in France or whatever, in a car driving up the mountainside, him talking about how that inspired painting, blah, blah, blah. And it is a totally different, experience going to this sort of surround sound but surround visual thing as well. I can totally see how, as a student, it must have a big impact on what you take away, what you remember, and sort of how it gets you thinking about things a bit differently, which I'm sure is part of the provocation you're trying to achieve here, which is just to get students to think about how they can think about their own practice and their own delivery of work in the future in a slightly different way. Sue,
I just want to say how fantastic I think that is, and reflect not just from the visual and artistic, if you like, experience, but as someone who's just been going through the health service because of complications following a hip replacement. So nowhere near anything like Clarence, but the difference in attitude of staff and what I've learned, and I'm hoping to volunteer for patient feedback. And a friend of mine who's had a very serious operation is involved in now producing, with a peer group, information for forthcoming patients, that the patient's experience very, very much now needs to be taken into account in health education. And I'm so pleased to see that you're doing that so powerfully.
Yeah, it's a great example, isn't it, of health and creativity. The Venn diagram between health and creativity, I often think is very congruent in many ways, if you can have a congruent Venn diagram. In other words, a lot of overlap between how creativity and health outcomes can learn and work together. That's great, Sue, that you're doing something about the fact that you've been through a bit of a tough time and trying to probably pull a bit of a positive spin, not spin, but positive, outcome as a result of that. That sounds really interesting. Great. Helen, you've got your hand up. Helen is a filmmaker, by the way, Finn and Steve.
Yeah, I also was in a really bad road accident 30 years ago, and I've never recovered from it, actually. And it was really, really powerful, especially the sound. It really triggered me, actually. I mean, I know it's aimed at students, but God, it brought it all back to me. And also, I was really happy. I don't know if it's a kind of adrenaline reaction or something, but I was high as a kite after my accident. No, it's great. I just wanted to comment that I thought it was really good, and I think it's really good that you're doing this. And I've had my fair share of because I look okay. I've still got neurological problems, but I look fine. And I, I get young doctors and nurses and people not very sympathetic. And it's great that this training is happening. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you. Derek.
Thank you. There are echoes here of what happened to the Times writer Melanie Reid. That was to do with a riding accident, and I wonder. I heard her speak at Words by the Water in Keswick back in 2020. She was actually on the what proved to be the last day of that because everything shut down for COVID. But I think that was words, but this seemed to have such a dramatic impact. I had a much more minor accident years ago playing cricket when I effectively lost the sight, or thought I had lost the sight of one eye, and it's that instantaneous change when life is you're doing something quite normal, having a good time, and then suddenly everything changes. And anything like this that can help people, not just the people who suffer the accidents, but from the angle you've taken, those who deal with them, and how even the most well-meaning expressions of sympathy and so on can actually be extremely unhelpful rather than helpful. So being able to put them into the position of somebody who actually experienced this and learn from them, it's a reversal of roles, and I think it's extremely important. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Derek, and thank you, Helen, for your comments as well. It's amazing how this is opening up a conversation. I'm just looking in chat. Zoe's talking about. Zoe, do you want to just mention what you've put there in chat?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much. It was fascinating seeing it, and I just love the way it can bring things home. Just with what Derek was saying as well, I think that real life or that immersive experience definitely heightens senses, and through that, it must be amazing. And it's great that it's being used within the healthcare profession as well and training. I just wrote about it's super exciting that it's in Cumbria. It's really great that that's there, and I hope look forward to seeing it grow. And I think the scope whilst I'm sure it's super busy internally, the scope for external collaboration is so exciting. And I think it's just, I just wrote that it's a real shame about I used to work in the performing arts department there many moons ago, and it's heartbreaking that performing arts programme isn't running at the moment. I know it's a national problem, not just locally. Because that shared learning with immersive live performance and also immersive technology, the scope there is just phenomenal. And actually for performing arts students, it would take them out of, I do a lot of work in site responsive or non-conventional theatre settings. So to take students out of the context of a theatre and to let them experience something that's very real about human experience would have just been amazing. So yeah, anyone that can canvas for that to come back would be great. Totally biased over here.
No, that's quite all right. You're allowed to be biased. That's absolutely fine. Our time is up, Stephen Finn. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thanks to Clarence for who I know you're obviously still in touch with, for being so involved as well. I really learned lots listening to you and watching that clip as well. And what a great thing you're doing. Good luck with it as well. It must be, really interesting to be involved in, but quite, whenever you're doing stuff which is sort of groundbreaking and different, it's sometimes 2 steps forwards, 1 step back probably, or something like that. So good luck with it all as well. And stay in touch. If you're doing more interesting stuff, stay in touch. And, perhaps at some stage we might be able to come along and have a look at what it is that you do there, because it looks really interesting. And, I think for the creative arts sector, we love stuff like that. So great. Thank you. Stick around because we're going to hear from Liz Richardson shortly. Neil, have you sorted out your birds? I know you're outdoors there, and you've been. Are the birds singing for you, Neil?
A little bit, yes. I think we've got some sparrows in our bird box. We had a swift box put up last year.
Oh,
I think it's been
nice.
occupied by some sparrows at the moment, so that's nice. Yes, there are birds tweeting away.
Lovely. One day we'll do a total al fresco call where everyone's got to be outside somewhere, because that's what we can do. Right. Before we hear from Liz, just a quick, anyone doing anything interesting, just stick your hand up that you want to tell people about that's going on in Cumbria. Pete.
I'll just get my blur off. So there you go. I'm in February. I was involved in the Uncovering Roman Carlisle dig at the cricket ground, where they found this big mansio, this big place. And while I was there, I wrote a few poems. I mentioned it, and it turns out other people have written a few poems. So we're putting together an anthology of poems about the dig with photographs. Find a good photograph to show you. There you go. Photograph with all people.
Fantastic.
And poems. And we're going to be selling it to raise money for the summer dig.
Great. Obviously, where can we get hold of it?
We'll do a launch event.
Excellent.
Which I will spread the news on. Obviously, this is not the final copy. This is just a draft.
Yeah, that's great. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff, Pete. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to go Jonathan, then Sue, then Gemma, then Zoe. Jonathan.
Yes, good morning. We have an interesting exhibition coming up in Millom at the Hill Village Hall, which is on the road out of Millom towards Barrow and Broughton. There's a local architect has inherited quite a cache of pictures from his parents who recently died. The principal painter is David Bates, who met his wife at the Royal School of Art in London, and then taught in Preston for many years. But David was the son of a Methodist minister in Millom for a number of years. So there's some of his juvenilia, or his sketches of Millom, which are a very high standard. Those are the beginning of the exhibition. And then when he returned in retirement to do his more mature pieces, along with his wife, and along with another artist who's a student of theirs in Preston, Jim Billsborough, there's some of his works as well. He's certainly a very popular and gifted artist here. But that's at the Hill. It starts today and runs Saturday is the opening. There's some drinkies and so forth, and runs on until Sunday.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Sue.
Hi. Personally, I'm giving a paper at Sheffield University that's open to all, run by this traditional song forum and the music department there, and that's in relation to Cumbrian folk song and sense of place and creating community. But what I really wanted to flag up, more importantly, tonight, I'm going to the preview of the wonderful Winifred Nicholson Rag Rugs exhibition at Tully House, and that starts tomorrow and I think runs for a couple of months, certainly right over the Easter holiday. Winifred Nicholson, as a painter, wife of Ben Nicholson, lived near Lanercost, brilliant work, but she promoted the use of, she realised it was a local craft, making body mats or rag rugs, and encouraged people to do that and to bring artistic focus into that as well. So that's going to be really interesting, open from tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you, Sue. And I know there's a Tully reopening thing being pulled together, I think, for April or May. Can't remember. Some date in May, I think it might be.
No, it's still in April. I think it's the last weekend. It's the weekend.
Yeah. Great. So finally, Tully will reopen as well, which is good news for everybody. Thank you, Sue. Gemma.
That leads on perfectly to me. That was one of my points with Tully House is doing the reopening. They've got their new space. I think it was the 26th of April.
Okay.
And then a little bit way off, but the Ulverston Print Fair is the 3rd and 4th of May. So it's in the calendar. So hopefully I will definitely be going because it's in the calendar.
Are you involved in that, Gemma?
I'm not, no, but hopefully it will push me to do it because that's my background is print design.
Yeah, no,
so
I've been a couple of times. It's an amazing exhibition.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, great, lovely stuff. Thank you very much, Gemma. Zoe, come off mute, Zoe. There we go.
I'm off. Hi. Sorry, I was going hand, no microphone. So just really quickly, I am just giving another little plug for the DA dance theatre classes I'm doing on Monday evenings. So we've got 2 weeks left. It's been so beautiful. We've had people from the age of 17 to 88, which has just been brilliant to play with. So yeah, that's on at 6:30 until 8:30 at the University of Cumbria, Brampton Road campus. Drop me an email. I'll put my email in chat if you want to come along and try out some dance theatre. We very much work with who's in the room, so it's kind of responding to people in the room. And also, I went to...
I feel like this call, Zoe. We work with who's in the room.
Yeah, totally. Responsive, Tom. It's all about it. That's what it is. I went to the Sill, which I know is Northumberland, and I'm sure everyone's been, but I hadn't been, actually. I'd been driving past it so many times and finally got to go, and I thoroughly enjoyed not only just the exhibition that's downstairs in the well area. That was really cool and interactive, and I am a child, I discovered when I'm in an exhibition space, but also Spellbound, the exhibition from Jackie Morris that's been, I'm not sure how long it's up for, but it was really beautiful, so I highly recommend people popping along to see that.
Jackie Morris, the wildlife artist.
Yes, it was beautiful, and the otters in particular, just look at them all day.
So I did an interview with Jackie, actually. There's a podcast of my interview with Jackie when she had a big exhibition at Reged last summer. So it's about 10 podcast episodes ago. So if you fancy finding out a bit more about Jackie Morris and stuff, there's a podcast episode on the CACM website. Thank you, Zoe.
No worries.
And Neil's going to a FON, Full of Noises event in the woods today. That just sounds exciting as a one-liner. I'm going to a FON event in the woods today. John Hegley, of course, is back in Cumbria, 4th of April at the Penrith Quaker Meeting House, 7:30, says Phil. Thank you for putting that in there, Amy, the podcast link. I'm going to the Kergate in Cockermouth tonight because they've just been revamping their sort of auditorium upstairs for about the last 5 or 6 months, and they're finally reopening it tonight. So I'm off to see that and see what's going on there. So that is my plan for this evening. Thank you, everybody. That was really interesting. I love to get around the county as well. But now we are going to speak to Liz Richardson, who is in the Peak District, of all places, where she lives. But she is very much from Bekermit originally and has written a new piece called Local, which is coming to Rosehill and elsewhere next month. Liz, very nice to see you again. Tell us a bit about yourself and tell us about Local.
Well, first of all, I want to just say that I was really intrigued by Steve and Finn's piece, because my first ever play that I wrote was actually about my illness, and I decided to test it out first of all as a stand-up comedy to see if people could laugh at my illness, and then someone picked it up and then developed it into a play which toured for quite a few years and was enabled members of the public to obviously put their lives on it, but especially people that also suffered with the illness would come. But then I decided I'd do a tour around hospital conferences to the staff, and from the surgeons, we had high up, surgeons who would actually come and see it, thinking it wasn't for them, to the staff, the nurses and doctors who were dealing in this department a lot. And it was unbelievable, the impact to have that, the NHS integrate into the arts. I just wasn't ready for the response that I got, and the hospitals that then got back in touch with me to say that they were using it as a way to, because my plays are published, as a way for staff to bring on that empathetic kind of human relationship with their patients. So art has a big place to play within a healthcare system because it's human. So I don't think it should be made into a corporate system at all. Whatever the way it is, video, theatre, music, it's about human relation. So yeah, that was my first play. And I didn't bring that one actually to Cumbria. So I trained as an actor in London. I went to acting school for 4 years. Life didn't really work out how I thought it would be, because I was diagnosed with this illness, and then I decided to go into stand-up, like I said, and then I ended up, again, didn't intend to start writing my own work, but I started writing my own plays, and then over a few years collaborating basically with Northwest artists. So I moved away from London, moved to the Peak District, and decided to actually set up my own production company, so that I could oversee a group of collaborations of any different forms of art. So I work with, creative arts. So I work with video designers, sound designers, LX, etc. And so I did bring my show Swim to Theatre by the Lake, I mentioned when I joined. So that opened in 2022 at Theatre by the Lake, but unfortunately, we did do a great run anyway, and that was co-produced by Theatre by the Lake. I did take that to Rose Hill as well. It did very well at Rose Hill. It was a piece about grief and about how I was seeing how a community was dealing with tragedy, and it was specifically about outdoor swimming, which has since that show really become something like wildly popular. So that show toured for a good couple of years, and it just made me think about how I was able to bring that piece to Rose Hill and it sold pretty well, that there was an audience that wanted to engage in storytelling. My pieces are, so I perform in my own plays, it's just easier that way, and my pieces tend to be so far solo. Again, I didn't intend it to go that way, but I've realized, that's my passion is storytelling. And so I had this new idea for a show a couple of years ago, which is now entitled Local. And it was about me going back to my roots in West Cumbria. And although I don't live there anymore and haven't lived there for a good 21, 22 years, my parents still lived there. And I wanted to reconnect with, did I belong to that place still? Did I ever belong there? I was born in Whitehaven. My parents, like I said, are there. My brothers were all born there, but we all left the nest at 18 and haven't lived there since. And so where's my sense of belonging? And then the piece then became about the R&D stages, which I went to Rose Hill and said, look, I'd really like to do my R&D with you at Rose Hill so that I'm coming back to my roots. And we didn't really have any theatres around. Theatre by the Lake wasn't even a theatre that I could go to. Only when I was in my late teens, I think it was a fancy night out. But we didn't really have access to the arts, certainly not a huge amount in my school. And so I just wanted to go back to that and try and understand what was missing, what did things go wrong, did I feel like I belonged to that place, and my connection to it. So that started the R&D process about a year or so ago, and then it grew, it changed, and it has now become this piece that is opening at Rose Hill. I really wanted to make sure I'd open the show at Rose Hill, and before it went off on tour. So it opens next month.
And would you say it's a what sort of themes does it explore, Liz?
Well, I did originally think it was all about me going home and taking apart, my childhood and the school, and it was hard. Our school, the school's not even there anymore. It's now West Lakes Academy. It got knocked down. It was meant to be knocked down apparently in the 60s, but we kept going there. It was about I thought originally it was about, so the main employer was Sellafield. There wasn't huge opportunity or certainly weren't fed huge opportunity to think differently. At my school, it was really encouraged that you would go to work at Sellafield. There were grants for you to start working in the energy sector. So I wanted to unpick that a bit, where did that stem from, and unearth what me and my friends went through, feeling like outsiders sometimes because we were into the arts or music. And then my parents started panicking that I was going to pull it all apart and come back and go, oh, it was awful. But actually, when I went back, I realized it was about something much deeper, much more profound, that it was about my sense of belonging to the place, and letting go of a place, and therefore letting go of a part of your life, actually, and choosing to move and choosing to set up home and choosing to start a family, and then saying to your children, this is where you're going to start belonging to. So it opened up lots of really interesting conversations, and I went back and met with the old headmaster and talked about how things were for him. Obviously, he sees a whole range of different walks of life in the time that he was there, and now still living in Cockermouth. So all of these people feature actually in the play.
Is it? I want to, so CACN, Cumbria Arts and Culture Network, have just put a big application into the Arts Council, which we'll find out about in May, to do a piece of work called See It to Be It, See It to Be It, which is a massive collaborative piece of work that is designed with all the arts, or almost all the arts organisations in Cumbria have got on board about this, which is absolutely about trying to show young people there is a different career path that you can go down other than Sellafield and BAE, and trying to tackle head-on opportunities for young people to take creative careers and feel that it can be for them as well. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about this, Liz, because if we get that grant through, it's going to be a big piece of work for the next couple of years that this network will concentrate on focusing on young people and trying to say, there are other, because it's about all sorts of things, but it's about role models, it's about opportunities, it's about getting people into schools and getting them paid to go into schools. Whereas if you work for a big organisation like Sellafield or whatever, you kind of on a salary or whatever. So watch this space as far as that's concerned. But I was going to ask you, Liz, it sounds like your work is very much you're kind of exposing yourself. You're a one woman on stage, and your work is about stuff that's obviously close to your heart, be it wild swimming, be it about growing up in West Cumbria. How is that as a performer?
Yes, I think I give myself, and not only myself, but also again my parents, sleepless nights about what I'm going to say. I do make sure everything that I talk about and everyone that I talk about within my shows obviously give consent to what I talk about. Yeah, I place my life on the stage, I suppose, and in a very honest manner, so that it opens up conversation for people to put their stories on mine. I never do something that's so unique that people can't relate. It's all relatable. Yeah. I mean, the show about swim, even though it's about wild swimming, it wasn't actually. It was about grief, and it was about how we deal in community with grief. So people who'd never swum in their life or hated water would come to that and be able to put their lives on it. I think it's quite cathartic in a way. I suppose I go through before the performance, I go through the whole writing process. And sometimes I have to pinch myself when I'm sat at the moment doing pre-production meetings, and I've got all these incredible creative artists who are now building my show for me. And I think, that was just from me, this harebrained idea of talking about West Cumbria and about my school and about mine shafts and nuclear energy. And so it's great how it spreads. So I think, and people learn from that, they take from that, they share in the story, and then people start opening, even in creative team, their lives and their connection to it. So I think if I could do that, then I'm all for carrying on doing that. If it carries on conversation, that's what storytelling is about. But specifically with this piece, I wanted to celebrate coming back to West Cumbria. I wanted it very much to start at Rose Hill. I then go to Theatre by the Lake, but I wanted to also give it opportunity to go. I can get out there. Anyone can get out there. I had no opportunity. I mean, I distinctly remember my what's it called? The meeting you have. Oh, Charles in the room. Careers advisor. Yeah, one moment. Careers advisor saying, where did it go? Hold on 1 minute, I'm just talking. A careers advisor talking, saying, the only thing I can think for you that would be appropriate would maybe doing English lit at university. And I thought, I don't want to be a teacher, or I don't want to do that. So I was really lucky, but I went off to an audition to acting school, and I got in. So it was about the individual, I think, rather than what we were fed. So if we're not getting powers of funding, we should do. I mean, Arts Council are really keen for me to bring my work in Cumbria, but it's still about finding those individuals, I think, and there being one person that says, I think you should go and do that. Yeah. I was lucky my parents allowed me to do as I wanted. A lot of parents would say, don't go into the arts, there's no money. But it just takes that tiny one person to encourage a student to think differently. It doesn't need vast amounts of money behind it. and that anyone in West Cumbria could go and have opportunity to go to acting school in London as well. Jessie.
Listen, Liz, I can tell you're being pulled in different directions. I can tell.
No, it's fine. I just knew he'd be quiet all the way through when I wasn't talking, and then obviously walk in the room when I was.
Well, listen, we've got to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, Liz. And that graphic that Amy pulled up there, that's the Rose Hill date, which is on the 15th of May, I think. And then as Rachel has put in there from Theatre by the Lake, it comes to Theatre by the Lake, 23rd and 24th of May. And as Ursula has put there, this is absolutely up my street and sounds amazing. So it does sound really, really interesting. And for those of us that live in West Cumbria, I think we'll be going to see that and see what it's about, and seeing that whole West Cumbrian prism that I suspect Liz will be writing and performing through. So thank you so much. And there is another face appearing on the screen.
Yeah, and for those, he's just going to keep saying Mum. And for those, if you can't get to the show, do read about. You can buy my work still. You can buy that piece that I talked about called Gutted on Bloomsbury. I can put the link there.
Excellent stuff. All right, Liz, that's great. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for introducing us to a new member of the Cumbria Arts and Culture Network as well, which is always fantastic. We're always trying to bring the age down. Thank you ever so much to Finn and to Steve and to Liz for this morning. It's been really fascinating learning about what's been going on across the county, and some really interesting stuff in chat as well. Just so you know, next week we're going to hear from a filmmaker called Sam Mason, a young chap who is from Cumbria, who's at Bournemouth University, who's making a sci-fi film in Cumbria. We're going to hear from Emily Hennessy, who's running a storytelling festival called Stealing Thunder. And also, I don't know if you've seen that competition for the design of a flag across Cumbria. The Lord Lieutenant of Cumbria, Alex Scott, is trying to get a new flag for Cumbria designed. So if the stars align, we'll get Alex Scott on to talk to us about why there should be a new flag for Cumbria. I think the closing date for designing it is about the end of April. So if you're a designer of flags, that might be a call for you as well. Lovely to see you all. Enjoy the sunshine. It's with us for the next few days, I think. So enjoy it. Derek, if you've got a significant birthday, have a great birthday at the races. Sounds like you're going to go gambling at the races. That sounds good to me as well. And maybe see you at the Kirkgate this evening. Thanks to everybody for this morning. Great to see you all. See you again soon.